Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth as he looked at the small device on his workbench. The alien girl, barely reaching his waist, stood nervously beside him with large purple eyes that seemed to hold back tears. Her toy looked nothing like the mechanical gadgets human children played with. Instead, it was a smooth, crystalline object that pulsed with faint blue light when it worked properly. Right now, it was completely dark. "It stopped singing yesterday," the girl said in broken standard, her voice carrying a musical quality common to her species, the Velnari. "Mother says no credits for fixing." "But you help anyway?" Marcus smiled down at her. The Velnari were one of the newer species to join the Galactic Council, and their children often wandered into his small repair shop in the station's lower levels. Most other mechanics charged too much or refused to work on alien technology. Marcus had always been different. He enjoyed the challenge of understanding how other species built their machines. "Let me take a look," he said, gently taking the toy from her small hands. "What's your name?" "Zira," she replied, watching hopefully as Marcus examined the device under his work light. The toy was more complex than it appeared. Marcus could see tiny circuits embedded within the crystal structure itself. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but he had learned that most alien devices followed basic principles of energy flow and resonance. He just needed to find where the connection had broken. As he worked, Marcus became aware of someone watching from the doorway of his shop. He glanced up to see a tall figure in an immaculate uniform. The alien wore the deep blue coat of a Galactic Council Admiral, complete with rank insignia that marked them as high-ranking military personnel. Their species was unfamiliar to Marcus, with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. "Excuse me," the Admiral said, their voice carrying an odd harmonic undertone. "I was told this was a repair facility." "It is," Marcus replied, not looking up from Zira's toy. "But I'm busy with this little one right now. If you need something fixed, you'll have to wait." The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. Few beings in the galaxy would ask a Council Admiral to wait, especially not a human from the lower decks. But Marcus was focused on a delicate adjustment inside the crystalline structure. He had found the problem, a tiny fracture in one of the resonance chambers. Zira watched with fascination as Marcus carefully applied a small amount of conductive paste to bridge the crack. It wasn't the proper repair material for Velnari technology, but human ingenuity often meant making do with what was available. The key was understanding that the crystal didn't just store energy. It generated specific frequencies that created the toy's songs. "There," Marcus said as the toy suddenly blazed with blue light and began emitting a gentle melodic humming. "Good as new." Zira's face lit up with joy as she hugged the toy to her chest. The musical humming seemed to respond to her emotions, shifting to a brighter, more cheerful tune. She reached into her small pouch and pulled out a handful of colorful stones. "No credits," she said sadly, "but I give you these. Mama says they're just pretty rocks from homeworld." Marcus knelt down to her level and gently pushed her hands back. "Keep your rocks, little one. The smile on your face is payment enough." The Admiral had been silent throughout this exchange, but Marcus noticed their intense stare. There was something calculating in those mercury eyes, as if they were evaluating more than just a simple repair job. "That was skillfully done," the Admiral said as Zira skipped out of the shop, her toy singing happily. "Velnari resonance technology is notoriously difficult to repair. Most technicians won't even attempt it." "Most technicians don't take the time to understand it," Marcus replied, already turning back to his workbench. "You said you needed something fixed?" The Admiral stepped into the small shop, ducking slightly to avoid hitting their head on a low-hanging light fixture. "Actually, I was investigating reports of unusual repair work being done in this sector. Specifically repairs on military-grade equipment that should be impossible for civilian mechanics to handle." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his expression neutral. "I work on whatever people bring me. Within legal limits, of course." "Of course," the Admiral agreed, but their tone suggested they knew more than they were saying. "Tell me, how did you learn to work with such diverse technologies?" "Trial and error, mostly," Marcus said. "Growing up on a frontier world, you learn to fix whatever breaks. Can't afford to wait for certified technicians when your life support system fails." The Admiral nodded slowly, as if filing away this information. They walked around the small shop, examining the various tools and equipment Marcus had collected over the years. Most of it was human-made, but there were several alien devices that he had modified for his own use. You have quite an impressive collection here, the Admiral observed. Some of these tools are military issue. Restricted technology. Surplus sales, Marcus said quickly. All legal purchases. The Admiral picked up a small scanning device that Marcus used to analyze circuitry. As they examined it, their eyes narrowed. This is Korthak engineering, very rare. Very expensive, Marcus shrugged. Found it in a junk pile. Previous owner probably didn't know what they had. But the Admiral wasn't listening anymore. Their attention had shifted to Marcus himself, specifically to his left arm. Marcus realized with growing alarm that his shirt sleeve had rolled up during his work on Zira's toy, exposing part of a tattoo on his forearm. The Admiral's mercury eyes locked onto the partially visible marking. What they could see was clearly military in nature, sharp angular lines that formed part of a larger design. The Admiral's expression changed from casual interest to sharp focus. That's an interesting tattoo, they said quietly. Military service? Marcus quickly rolled down his sleeve. Something like that. Look, if you're not here for repairs, I've got work to do. But the Admiral wasn't moving. Instead, they were studying Marcus with the intensity of someone who had just discovered something very important. The air in the small shop seemed to grow heavy with tension. I think, the Admiral said slowly, we need to have a much longer conversation. Marcus felt the weight of the Admiral's stare as he busied himself organizing tools that didn't need organizing. The small repair shop suddenly felt much smaller with the imposing figure watching his every move. He had spent 3 years building a quiet life in this forgotten corner of the space station, and now it seemed that carefully constructed anonymity was about to crumble. You know, the Admiral said conversationally, I've seen that tattoo before. Or rather, I've seen tattoos like it. Very specific military unit. Very exclusive. Lots of people have military tattoos, Marcus replied, not looking up from his workbench. Doesn't mean much. The Admiral moved closer, their boots silent on the metal floor despite their size. True. But the Falcon unit tattoo is different. It's not just any military marking. It's reserved for a very special group of humans. A group that technically doesn't exist. Marcus's hand stilled on the wrench he was holding, the Falcon unit. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Officially, the unit had never existed. Unofficially, it had been humanity's most classified special operations group during the border wars. I think you have me confused with someone else, Marcus said carefully. Do I? The Admiral reached into their uniform and pulled out a small device. With a quick gesture, they activated it, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. Admiral Kesavara, Galactic Council Intelligence Division. I've been tracking reports of impossible repairs for the past 6 months. Technology that should be beyond civilian capability, fixes that require intimate knowledge of multiple alien engineering principles. The hologram showed a map of the station with several locations marked in red. Marcus recognized them all. Places where he had done repair work for aliens who couldn't afford proper technicians. The Vorthon merchant whose ship's drive I fixed last month, Marcus said slowly. The Zelani family whose environmental suit I repaired. You've been watching them all. Watching you, Admiral Kesavara corrected. At first I thought it might be black market technology sharing. But the more I investigated, the more curious it became. Every repair was done with standard tools and improvised solutions. No stolen tech, no illegal modifications, just pure skill and understanding. Marcus set down his wrench and turned to face the Admiral fully. What do you want? To understand how a simple mechanic knows how to repair Korthak shield generators, Velnari resonance systems, and Thraxi plasma conduits. Technologies that most PhD engineers in the Council struggle with. YouTube tutorials, Marcus said dryly. Admiral Kesavara's expression didn't change, but there was a hint of amusement in their mercury eyes. The Falcon unit was disbanded after the Kerrigan incident. All members were classified as killed in action. Very convenient way to make troublesome soldiers disappear. The mention of Kerrigan hit Marcus like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind. Burning ships, dying civilians. The impossible choice he and his team had been forced to make. The choice that had saved thousands of lives but violated direct orders from Earth Command. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. The official reports say the Falcon unit went rogue and was eliminated during a counter-terrorism operation, but intelligence has always had questions about those reports. Too convenient. Too clean. The Admiral deactivated the hologram and stepped closer. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what really happened at Kerrigan? Marcus felt his carefully built walls crumbling. No one had spoken his real name in 3 years. He had become Marcus Trent, small-time mechanic, forgotten citizen of the Outer Rim. But Admiral Kesavara had somehow pieced together his identity. Chen is a common name, Marcus said weakly. Chen Marcus, Falcon Unit Designation Delta 7, specialist in alien technology integration and battlefield engineering. Graduated top of his class from the Terra Technical Institute before volunteering for special operations. The Admiral's voice was matter-of-fact, as if reading from a file. Declared dead along with the rest of his unit after refusing to follow orders that would have resulted in civilian casualties. Marcus leaned against his workbench, suddenly feeling very tired. You seem to know everything already. What do you need from me? The truth, Admiral Kesavara said simply, and possibly your help. Before Marcus could respond, the shop's proximity alarm chimed. Someone was approaching. Marcus quickly gestured for the Admiral to step back into the shadows as the door opened. A young Thraxi engineer entered, carrying what looked like a damaged plasma regulator. Mechanic Marcus, the alien said in heavily accented standard. My friend Zira said you fix things others cannot. My regulator is broken and I cannot afford official repair. Marcus glanced at Admiral Kesavara, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Let me take a look, Marcus said, accepting the device from the Thraxi. The plasma regulator was a mess. Someone had clearly attempted a repair using completely wrong techniques, causing additional damage to the delicate internal components. Most mechanics would have declared it unsalvageable. Marcus could see why. The power matrix was completely fried, and the containment field generators were offline. As he worked, Marcus was acutely aware of Admiral Kesavara watching every move. The Admiral saw him identify the problem within minutes, saw him jury-rig a solution using parts from 3 different species technologies. They watched him bypass the damaged matrix with a clever rerouting that should have been impossible with standard tools. How much? The Thraxi asked when Marcus handed back the fully functional regulator. 20 credits, Marcus said. The actual repair value was easily 10 times that amount. The grateful alien paid and left, praising Marcus's skills to anyone who would listen on the comm channel. Marcus could already hear his shop's reputation spreading further through the alien community. Impressive, Admiral Kesavara said once they were alone again. You just performed a repair that would have taken a council engineering team 3 days and cost 1,000 credits. You did it in 20 minutes for 20 credits. The part was simpler than it looked, Marcus said, but he knew the Admiral wasn't buying it. The Falcon unit was trained for deep cover operations behind enemy lines. Part of that training involved learning to blend in with local populations, understanding their technology, their culture, their needs. The Admiral moved closer again. The best Falcon operatives could integrate so completely that they became indispensable to the communities they were protecting. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. The Admiral wasn't just randomly investigating repair work. They understood exactly what they were seeing. What happened to the rest of your unit? Admiral Kesavara asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a weapon. Marcus closed his eyes and saw their faces again. Sarah, their communications specialist, who could hack any system ever built. Jackson, their demolitions expert, who could disarm a bomb while joking about dinner plans. Maria, their medic, who had saved more lives than any doctor in council space. They're dead, Marcus said finally. All of them. Just like the reports say. But not how the reports say. The Admiral pressed. Marcus opened his eyes and met their gaze. No, not how the reports say. Admiral Kesavara nodded slowly. I need to know the real story, Marcus, because in 3 days the Galactic Council is voting on humanity's continued membership, and there are forces working very hard to ensure that vote fails. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Council had always been tenuous. Humans were newcomers. Barely 50 years since first contact, and their rapid technological advancement made many older species nervous. The idea that someone was actively working against human membership was terrifying but not entirely surprising. What does that have to do with me? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Admiral Kesavara moved to the small window overlooking the station's main thoroughfare. Below them, dozens of species mingled peacefully: humans, Velnari, Thraxi, Korthak, and many others. The vote hinges on trust. The Council needs to believe that humanity can be relied upon as partners, not just tolerated as junior members. And certain parties are planning to present evidence that humans are fundamentally untrustworthy. That human military units regularly engage in war crimes and cover them up. They're going to use the Kerrigan incident as their primary example. Marcus felt the familiar weight of guilt settle on his shoulders. Kerrigan had been a nightmare scenario from the beginning. Intelligence reports had indicated a terrorist cell was planning to detonate a bioweapon in a civilian population center. The Falcon unit had been deployed to stop them, but everything had gone wrong. The official reports already paint us as rogues who disobeyed orders, Marcus said bitterly. Exactly. And in 3 days, Admiral Vexthul of the Hegemony faction plans to present those reports to the full council. He'll argue that if humanity's most elite soldiers are criminals, how can any human be trusted with council membership? The Admiral turned from the window to face Marcus directly. But I believe the official reports are lies. I believe the Falcon unit was sacrificed to cover up something much worse, something that would embarrass Earth Command if it ever came to light. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, memories of that terrible day flooding back, the impossible choice, the screaming civilians, the knowledge that following orders would mean watching thousands die. You want me to tell you what really happened? Marcus said finally. I want you to help me save your species' future in the galaxy. Before Marcus could respond, his comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The display showed Zira's face, but the little Velnari girl looked frightened. Behind her, Marcus could see what looked like official council security. Mechanic Marcus, Zira said in a small voice. The security people want to talk to you. They say you fixed military things without permission. They want to take you away. Admiral Kesavara moved quickly to Marcus's side. Where are you, child? Level 7, near the residential quarters. They say Mechanic Marcus is in big trouble. The Admiral's expression darkened. Vexthul is moving faster than I expected. He's having you arrested before you can speak to anyone. Marcus felt a surge of anger. They're using her to get to me. She's just a kid. Council security has broad powers. They can detain anyone for questioning regarding potential technology violations. Admiral Kesavara was already moving toward the door. We need to go now. Wait, Marcus said. If I run, it just proves I'm guilty of something. If you stay, you'll disappear into a council detention facility, and your testimony will never see the light of day. The Admiral paused at the doorway. Choose quickly. In about 10 minutes, this place will be surrounded. Marcus looked around his small shop, the peaceful life he had built, the simple existence that had helped him forget the nightmares of war. Then he thought about Zira and the other aliens he had helped. They trusted him. They had welcomed him into their community despite his species' complicated reputation. There's something I need to get first, Marcus said, moving to a locked storage compartment beneath his workbench. Inside was a small data crystal and a military-issue plasma pistol he had hoped never to touch again. What's on the crystal? Admiral Kesavara asked. Insurance, Marcus replied grimly. My squad recorded everything that happened at Kerrigan. Real-time combat footage, communication logs, command orders. Everything Earth Command claimed never existed. The Admiral's mercury eyes widened. You've had evidence of the cover-up this entire time? My squad leader, Captain Santos, gave it to me before she died. Made me promise to keep it safe until someone trustworthy could use it. Marcus pocketed the crystal and checked the charge on his pistol. Guess that time has come. They moved quickly through the station service corridors, areas Marcus knew well from years of making repair calls. Admiral Kesavara seemed surprised by his knowledge of the station's layout. Falcon unit training, Marcus explained as they took a shortcut through a maintenance shaft. Always scout your environment. Always have an escape route. The training clearly took, the Admiral observed. How many of those repairs you've been doing were actually reconnaissance? Marcus paused in his crawling. He hadn't consciously thought about it, but the Admiral was right. Over 3 years, he had gained access to virtually every system on the station. He knew the security protocols, the communication networks, the power grid layouts. Old habits died hard. Force of habit, he said finally. They emerged from the maintenance shaft 2 levels down from Marcus's shop. Through the transparent aluminum walls, they could see Council security troops moving through the corridors in search patterns. Professional, thorough, and completely focused on finding one human mechanic. There, Admiral Kesavara pointed to a small group of aliens huddled near a transit station. Marcus could see Zira among them, still clutching her toy. Several other aliens he recognized were there too, customers whose equipment he had repaired. "They're being questioned," the Admiral said. "Standard procedure when investigating technology crimes. Anyone who had contact with the suspect gets interrogated." Marcus felt his jaw clench. These people had done nothing wrong except trust him to fix their belongings. Now they were caught up in galactic politics they couldn't possibly understand. "I'm going to get them out of this," he said. "Marcus, no. If you show yourself now, they're innocent. And they're under threat because they helped me." Marcus checked his pistol again. "Besides, you said you needed the truth about Kerrigan. Well, the truth is that sometimes you have to choose between following orders and doing what's right." Admiral Kesavara studied him for a moment, then slowly nodded. "What do you need?" "Access to the station's communication system. I'm going to send a message that will get everyone's attention." The Admiral pulled out their command authorization device. "This will give you emergency access to all station systems, but once you use it, there's no going back. Everyone will know you're alive and everyone will be looking for you." Marcus took the device and smiled grimly. "Good. It's time for Marcus Chen to stop hiding." As alarms began blaring throughout the station, Marcus activated the communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies. His message was simple but clear. He was alive. He had evidence of war crimes committed by Earth Command, and he was ready to tell the truth about Kerrigan. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, news feeds across Council space were reporting that a supposedly dead Falcon unit operative had resurfaced with explosive allegations. Admiral Vexthal's carefully planned political maneuvering had just encountered a very large obstacle. "Now what?" Admiral Kesavara asked as security alerts flashed on every display around them. Marcus watched as the Council security troops suddenly shifted their focus from questioning aliens to establishing a perimeter around the entire level. "Now we find out who's really running this investigation, and whether the Council wants the truth or just a convenient scapegoat." The station's command center erupted into controlled chaos as Marcus's broadcast rippled across the galactic communication networks. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species were demanding explanations, while news agencies scrambled to verify the claims of a supposedly dead soldier. Admiral Kesivara led Marcus through a series of service tunnels toward what they claimed was a secure location. Behind them, they could hear the heavy footsteps of security teams searching every level of the station. "Your broadcast has caused quite a stir," the Admiral said as they paused at a junction. 3 council members have already demanded an emergency session. Admiral Vexthal is claiming it's an elaborate hoax designed to disrupt the upcoming vote. "Let him claim whatever he wants," Marcus replied, checking the data crystal in his pocket. This crystal contains combat footage from Kerrigan. Real-time recordings of everything that happened. It's impossible to fake. They emerged into a small cargo bay where a sleek Council intelligence ship was docked. The vessel was unmarked but clearly designed for speed and stealth. Admiral Kesavara gestured for Marcus to board. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked. "Council chambers on Nexus Prime. If you're going to reveal the truth about Kerrigan, it needs to be in front of the full assembly. Anything less will be dismissed as propaganda." As their ship departed the station, Marcus watched the familiar lights fade into the darkness of space. For 3 years, that station had been his home, his refuge from a galaxy that believed him dead. Now he was willingly walking back into the storm that had destroyed his life once before. "Tell me about Kerrigan," Admiral Kesavara said once they were safely in hyperspace. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself remember. It started as a routine counterterrorism operation. Intelligence had detected chatter about a bioweapon being smuggled into the Kepler-7 colony. 50,000 civilians, mostly families of miners and researchers. The Admiral listened without interruption as Marcus continued. "Our orders were simple. Infiltrate the colony, locate the weapon, neutralize the terrorists. Clean and surgical. But when we arrived, we discovered the situation was much more complex." Marcus opened his eyes and stared out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. The bioweapon wasn't being brought in by terrorists. It was already there, planted by our own people. Earth Command? Worse. A joint operation between Earth Intelligence and the Hegemony faction. They were planning to detonate the weapon and blame it on separatist terrorists. The deaths of 50,000 humans would have been used to justify a massive military expansion into contested territory. Admiral Kesavara's mercury eyes widened. The Hegemony was involved from the beginning? Admiral Vexthul himself was coordinating with Earth intelligence. Our squad intercepted communications proving the entire terrorist threat was fabricated. The real plan was to murder 50,000 innocents for political gain. Marcus pulled up the memories he had tried so hard to suppress. Captain Santos contacted Earth Command directly, requesting clarification of our orders. The response was clear: proceed with the original mission. Ignore any contrary intelligence. Do not interfere with ongoing operations. They ordered you to let the massacre happen. More than that, they ordered us to help cover it up afterward. The Falcon unit was supposed to plant evidence linking the attack to separatist groups. We were going to be heroes who arrived just too late to save anyone, but managed to eliminate the terrorists responsible. The ship's navigation system chimed, indicating they were approaching Nexus Prime. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's primary meeting place. Ships from dozens of worlds surrounded the station, their representatives arriving for what was being called an emergency session. What did your unit do? Admiral Kesavara asked. What we were trained to do. We adapted to the situation and completed the real mission. Marcus's voice grew hard. We found the bioweapon and disarmed it. We exposed the conspiracy to the colonial authorities and provided them with evidence of the planned attack. And we arrested the Earth intelligence, operatives who were coordinating with hegemony, agents that must have created quite a problem for Earth Command. The biggest problem was that we refused to delete our combat recordings. Standard protocol was to preserve all mission data for debriefing, but Command wanted those recordings destroyed because they proved the terrorist threat was fake. Their ship docked at Nexus Prime with a soft thud. Through the airlock, Marcus could see Council security officers waiting to escort them. But these weren't the same troops who had been hunting him on the station. These wore the distinctive white uniforms of Council Internal Affairs. Captain Santos tried to negotiate. Marcus continued as they walked through the station's corridors. She offered to classify the recordings if Command would abort similar operations and prosecute the conspirators. But Earth intelligence had too much invested in the plan, so they eliminated the Falcon unit instead. They tried. Santos saw it coming and scattered the squad. She gave me the data crystal and ordered me to disappear until someone trustworthy could use the evidence. Then she and the others led command forces on a chase through the outer rim. They arrived at a preparation chamber adjacent to the main council assembly hall. Through the transparent walls, Marcus could see thousands of representatives from across the galaxy. The session was already in progress, with Admiral Vexthul addressing the assembly about humanity's unfitness for continued council membership. What happened to the rest of your squad? Admiral Kesavara asked gently. They died fighting Earth Command forces at a supply depot in the Vega system. Officially, they were eliminated while resisting arrest for war crimes. Unofficially, they were murdered to cover up the conspiracy they had exposed. Marcus watched as Vexthul displayed what he claimed were classified Earth Command reports detailing the Falcon unit's criminal activities. The documents were masterfully forged, painting Marcus and his team as bloodthirsty rogues who had murdered civilians and disobeyed direct orders. He's using our own mission against us, Marcus said bitterly, claiming we murdered the Earth intelligence operatives in cold blood instead of arresting them for treason. That's about to change, Admiral Kesavara said, activating a communication device. Council Internal Affairs has been investigating irregularities in Earth Command's reporting for months. Your crystal contains the evidence we need to prove the forgery. A technician approached with a data projector designed to interface with the crystal. This device will authenticate and broadcast your recordings to the full assembly. Once activated, the data cannot be altered or suppressed. Marcus hesitated for a moment, thinking about the peaceful life he was about to sacrifice. Then he thought about Zira and the other aliens who had trusted him. They deserved to know that not all humans were the monsters portrayed in Vexthul's propaganda. Do it, he said, inserting the crystal into the projector. The assembly hall fell silent as the recordings began to play. Marcus's own voice could be heard reporting the discovery of the bioweapon conspiracy. Captain Santos's communications with Earth Command were crystal clear, as were the orders to ignore the evidence and proceed with covering up mass murder. But the most damning evidence came from intercepted communications between Admiral Vexthul and Earth intelligence operatives. Not only had the hegemony faction been complicit in planning the massacre, they had been the primary architects of the conspiracy. As the recordings played, Marcus watched Admiral Vexthul's confident expression crumble. The alien admiral tried to claim the evidence was fabricated, but council forensic experts were already confirming its authenticity. The irony, Admiral Kesavara said quietly, is that Vexthul thought he was using humanity's alleged crimes to justify their expulsion from the council. Instead, he's just exposed his own faction's real crimes. The assembly erupted into chaos as representatives demanded explanations and investigations, but Marcus felt no satisfaction in watching his enemies fall. Too many good people had died to reach this moment, and the truth had come at too high a price. What happens now? He asked. Admiral Kesavara smiled grimly. Now we find out whether the galaxy values truth or politics. Your evidence has saved humanity's council membership, but it's also started a war between factions that will reshape galactic politics for decades to come. The council assembly hall had never seen such chaos. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were on their feet, shouting in dozens of languages as the implications of Marcus's evidence became clear. At the center of the storm, Admiral Vexthul stood frozen at his podium, his carefully crafted presentation in ruins around him. Marcus watched from the observation gallery as council security moved to surround Vexthul. The hegemony admiral's silver complexion had turned an ashen gray as forensic experts confirmed the authenticity of the recordings. There could be no denying his voice on the intercepted communications, no explaining away his role in planning mass murder. The hegemony faction is finished, Admiral Kesavara said quietly. Half their membership is already distancing themselves from Vexthul. The other half will be under investigation within hours. Below them, the council speaker called for order with limited success. The ancient Vortan's deep voice carried authority earned over centuries of diplomatic service. But even he struggled to contain the anger and confusion of the assembly. Representatives of the Galactic Council, the speaker announced, we will recess for emergency consultations. The accusations presented today require immediate investigation by Internal Affairs. As the assembly began to disperse, Marcus noticed a familiar group in the public observation area. Zira and several other aliens from the station had somehow made their way to Nexus Prime. The little Velnari girl spotted him and waved enthusiastically, her toy clutched in her other hand. Your friends traveled a long way to see this, Admiral Kesavara observed. They didn't have to do that, Marcus said, feeling a warmth in his chest despite the grim circumstances. Actually, they did. Zira's testimony helped Council Internal Affairs verify your identity. Her description of your repair techniques matched classified Falcon unit training records perfectly. Marcus smiled despite himself. The little girl had unknowingly provided crucial evidence by simply telling the truth about how he fixed her toy. Sometimes the most innocent observations were the most powerful. A council aide approached their seating area. Mr. Chen, the speaker has requested your immediate testimony before the Internal Affairs Committee. They need your full account of the Kerrigan incident for the official record. As they made their way through the station's corridors, Marcus noticed the changed atmosphere. Where there had been hostility toward humanity just hours earlier, now there was curiosity and respect. News of the Falcon unit's sacrifice was spreading rapidly through diplomatic channels. The Internal Affairs Committee convened in a secure chamber deep within Nexus Prime. The panel consisted of representatives from 5 different species, chosen specifically for their neutrality in galactic politics. At the center sat Magistrate Veltar, an ancient being whose species had been mediating disputes since before humans achieved spaceflight. Mr. Chen, Magistrate Veltar began, the evidence you have provided raises serious questions about Earth Command's conduct during the Kerrigan incident. We need your complete testimony regarding your unit's actions and the orders you received. For the next 4 hours, Marcus recounted every detail of that terrible mission. The committee listened intently as he described discovering the conspiracy, the impossible orders from Earth Command, and the decision his squad had made to save 50,000 innocent lives. Your unit chose to disobey direct orders, one committee member observed. In most military organizations, that would constitute mutiny. Yes, Marcus replied without hesitation. We chose to save lives over following orders. Captain Santos made it clear that we were crossing a line we could never uncross. But none of us could live with letting those people die for a political agenda. Magistrate Veltar leaned forward. And you maintained operational discipline throughout this disobedience? We followed proper arrest procedures when detaining the Earth intelligence operatives. We preserved all evidence of the conspiracy. We reported our actions to colonial authorities and provided them with everything they needed to prevent similar attacks. Marcus paused. We did our jobs, just not the job Earth Command wanted us to do. The committee members exchanged glances. Marcus could see them processing the implications of his testimony. The Falcon unit hadn't been rogue soldiers acting from bloodlust or personal gain. They had been professionals who chose duty to innocent life over duty to corrupt superiors. Mr. Chen, another committee member said, "Your evidence indicates that Admiral Vexthul was instrumental in planning the Kerrigan conspiracy. How do you reconcile this with his accusations against humanity?" "I think the Admiral got scared," Marcus said. "The conspiracy failed and he needed a scapegoat. What better way to deflect suspicion than to paint the people who exposed him as the real criminals?" A soft chime indicated an urgent message for the committee. Magistrate Veltar reviewed the communication and his expression grew grave. "Mr. Chen, we've just received word that Admiral Vexthul has fled Nexus Prime. His ship departed for Hegemony space 20 minutes ago." Admiral Kesavara, who had remained silent throughout the testimony, suddenly stood. "Magistrate, I request permission to pursue." "Vexthul cannot be allowed to escape justice." "Denied," Veltar replied firmly. "This is now a matter for diplomatic resolution. We cannot risk starting a war over one individual, however guilty." Marcus felt a familiar frustration building in his chest. Once again, politics was getting in the way of justice. The people responsible for murdering his squad were going to escape, because pursuing them was inconvenient. "There's something else," Marcus said quietly. "Captain Santos gave me more than just the Kerrigan recordings." The committee turned their attention back to him. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a second data crystal, one he hadn't mentioned to Admiral Kesavara. Santos suspected that Kerrigan wasn't an isolated incident. Before she died, she managed to compile evidence of other operations, other conspiracies between corrupt Earth Command officers and hegemony agents. Magistrate Veltar's eyes widened. How many other operations? 17 over the past 5 years, all designed to destabilize human colonies or create pretexts for military expansion. The bioweapon plot at Kerrigan was just the largest. As Marcus inserted the second crystal into the committee's data system, the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Earth Command's corruption went far deeper than anyone had imagined. With dozens of officers involved in selling out their own species for personal gain, this changes everything, one committee member whispered. "It means Earth Command needs to be completely restructured." Another added. Marcus watched as the committee absorbed the magnitude of the evidence. These weren't just military crimes, they were crimes against humanity itself, committed by the very people sworn to protect human interests in the galaxy. "Mr. Chen," Magistrate Veltar said finally, "your actions at Kerrigan and your testimony today have prevented a grave injustice. The Council will not only maintain humanity's membership, but we will also be implementing new oversight procedures to prevent similar corruption in any species' military command." "What about my squad?" Marcus asked. "They died because they chose to do what was right. Will their sacrifice be acknowledged?" "The Falcon unit will be posthumously honored by the full Council," Veltar replied. "Their courage in exposing this conspiracy will be remembered as one of the finest examples of military honor in galactic history." Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. For 3 years he had carried the weight of his squad's deaths alone. Now finally, the galaxy would know the truth about their sacrifice. Admiral Kesavara approached as the committee session concluded. "There's someone who wants to meet you," she said, gesturing toward the chamber's entrance. Zira stood in the doorway, still clutching her repaired toy. Behind her were several other aliens from the station, along with what appeared to be a news crew from the Galactic Broadcasting Network. "Mechanic Marcus," Zira called out, running toward him. "The news people say you're a hero. They say you saved lots of people." Marcus knelt down and gently hugged the little girl. "I just did what my friends would have wanted me to do." The news crew moved forward, their cameras capturing the moment. Marcus realized that this image, a human soldier embracing an alien child, would probably be broadcast across the galaxy. It would become the new symbol of human-alien relations, replacing the dark narrative that Admiral Vexthul had tried to create. "What will you do now?" Admiral Kesavara asked as the crowds began to disperse. Marcus looked around at the aliens who had made the journey to support him, at the council representatives who had listened to his testimony with respect and understanding, and at the galaxy that was slowly beginning to see humanity in a new light. "I think I'll go home," he said finally. "Back to the station. Those people need a mechanic, and I need to remember what it feels like to build things instead of fighting wars." 6 months after the council hearings, Marcus stood in his newly expanded repair shop, watching as his latest apprentice carefully calibrated a Thraxi power coupling. The apprentice was human, a young woman named Elena Santos, who had sought him out after learning her grandfather was Captain Maria Santos of the Falcon unit. "Easy with the resonance frequency," Marcus advised. "Thraxi technology is more intuitive than precise. Let the system find its own harmony." Elena nodded, her concentration absolute. She had inherited her grandfather's technical aptitude, along with her determination to honor the Falcon unit's memory. Marcus had been hesitant to take on a human apprentice at first, but Elena's dedication had quickly proven itself. The shop itself had grown considerably since Marcus's return to the station. What had once been a cramped single room was now a bustling technical center with 3 repair bays and a small classroom. The council had awarded Marcus a substantial grant for services to interspecies cooperation, and he had used the money to create something unprecedented, a school where beings from different species could learn to understand each other's technology. "Teacher Marcus," Zira called out as she entered the shop. The little Velnari girl had grown taller in the past months, but she still carried her toy everywhere. Now, however, she also carried a small toolkit and wore the distinctive blue vest of a junior apprentice. "Your Korthak shield generator is ready," she announced proudly, leading an adult alien toward one of the repair bays. The Korthak customer looked skeptical about being served by such a young technician, but Marcus had learned to trust Zira's instincts with energy-based systems. The transformation of the shop reflected a larger change in the station itself. Following the revelations about the hegemony conspiracy, the Galactic Council had implemented new policies promoting cross-cultural cooperation and technology sharing. Marcus's repair shop had become a model for these initiatives, a place where different species worked together to solve problems that none could handle alone. "Marcus," Elena called out, "I'm getting some strange readings from this plasma regulator. The harmonics are completely off standard." Marcus moved to examine the device. It was clearly hegemony technology, but modified with components from at least 3 other species. "Probably black market work," he said. "Someone tried to upgrade the system without understanding how the base technology functions." As he worked to identify the modifications, Marcus became aware of someone watching from the shop's entrance. He looked up to see Admiral Kesavara, now wearing the insignia of the Council's new Interspecies Cooperation Bureau. "Admiral," Marcus said, wiping his hands clean. "This is a pleasant surprise. Director Kesavara now," the Admiral corrected with a smile. The promotion came with the new assignment. "I'm here on official business, actually." Marcus gestured for them to step into his small office away from the noise of the workshop. "What can I do for the Council?" "It's more about what the Council can do for you," Kesavara replied, producing a formal document from their coat. "The Technical Education Initiative has been approved for galaxy-wide implementation. The Council wants to establish schools like yours on every major station and colony world." Marcus read through the document, his eyebrows rising as he absorbed the scope of the proposal. Funding for hundreds of schools, standardized curricula for cross-species technical training, and research grants for developing new teaching methods. "This is incredible," Marcus said. "But why show this to me?" "Because we want you to lead the program," Kesavara said simply. "Director of Interspecies Technical Education for the Galactic Council. Your own team, unlimited resources, and the authority to implement these programs anywhere in Council space." Marcus set down the document and looked out through his office window at the bustling workshop. Elena was now working alongside a young Thraxi engineer, both of them laughing as they solved a particularly tricky problem. Zira was explaining resonance theory to a group of adult students who hung on her every word. "It's a generous offer," Marcus said finally, "but I think I'll have to decline." Kesavara's mercury eyes showed surprise. "May I ask why?" "This position would give you the power to expand your work across the entire galaxy." "That's exactly the problem," Marcus replied. "Bureaucracy has a way of crushing the things it's meant to promote." Here I can focus on actually teaching people instead of managing budgets and writing reports. The Admiral was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I understand. But the offer remains open if you change your mind. After Kesavara left, Marcus returned to the workshop to find an unexpected scene. A group of Earth Command officers had arrived and were examining the various alien technologies being repaired. Their leader, a stern-faced colonel, approached Marcus with obvious skepticism. "Mr. Chen," the colonel said, "I'm Colonel Harrison from the new Earth Command Oversight Committee. We're conducting routine inspections of human citizens working with alien technology." Marcus felt a familiar tension building in his shoulders. "Is there a problem, Colonel?" "That remains to be seen. We have reports that you're sharing classified human military techniques with alien nationals. That could constitute a security violation." Elena looked up from her workstation, her face flushing with anger. "Classified techniques? He's teaching basic repair procedures that any first-year engineering student should know." "I wasn't addressing you. Specialist Santos," Harrison replied coldly. The use of Elena's military rank sent a chill through the workshop. Marcus realized that the colonel had done his homework. He knew about Elena's connection to Captain Santos and was using it as leverage. "My students learn universal principles of technology," Marcus said carefully. "Nothing species-specific, nothing classified. Everything I teach here is available in standard technical manuals." Colonel Harrison picked up a partially disassembled Velnari resonance device. "This technology was restricted for human study until last month. How long have you been working with it?" "Since I started fixing toys for children," Marcus replied. Which, last I checked, wasn't a crime. The tension in the room was becoming palpable. Marcus could see his alien students growing uncomfortable as the Earth Command officers continued their inspection. This was exactly the kind of suspicion and hostility that the Kerrigan revelations were supposed to have eliminated. "Colonel," Marcus said quietly, "can we discuss this privately?" In his office, away from the students, Marcus faced the Earth Command officer directly. "What do you really want?" "To understand whether you're still loyal to humanity," Harrison replied bluntly. "Your testimony destroyed careers and damaged Earth's reputation. Some people think you've become too comfortable with our former enemies." Marcus felt a flash of the old anger, but he controlled it. The hegemony faction was responsible for mass murder, exposing that saved human lives, not to mention preserving our council membership. "That's one interpretation," Harrison said. "Another is that you aired humanity's dirty laundry in public and made us look weak to our allies." "Colonel, I'm going to give you some advice," Marcus said, his voice growing hard. "The galaxy is watching how humanity handles this transition. If you start harassing humans who are building positive relationships with alien species, you'll prove that every negative stereotype about us is correct." Harrison studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your point is noted. But understand that Earth Command is still responsible for human security. We'll be keeping an eye on activities like yours." After the officers left, Marcus found his students huddled together, clearly shaken by the encounter. Zira looked up at him with worried eyes. "Will the soldiers make you stop teaching us?" she asked. Marcus knelt down to her level and smiled. "No, little one. It's going to take more than a few nervous officers to shut down what we're building here." But as he looked around at his diverse group of students, Marcus realized that the real work was just beginning. Changing official policy was only the first step. Changing hearts and minds would take much longer, and it would require people willing to build bridges one relationship at a time. "All right, everyone," Marcus announced to the workshop. "Let's get back to work. We have a universe to fix." 2 years later, Marcus stood before the largest gathering of his career, the first Galactic Conference on Interspecies Technical Cooperation. Representatives from over 300 worlds filled the massive auditorium on Nexus Prime, all gathered to discuss the revolutionary changes in cross-cultural education that had begun in a small repair shop. "When I first started fixing broken toys," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall, "I never imagined it would lead to this, but every great journey begins with a single step, and sometimes that step is as simple as helping a child smile again." In the front row, Zira sat with the other graduates of Marcus's original program. Now 16 and already accepted to the Galactic Technical Institute, she had become living proof of what was possible when different species worked together. Her toy, still functioning after all these years, rested in a place of honor in Marcus's workshop. The principles we've discovered are not complex, Marcus continued. Curiosity transcends species barriers. Kindness opens doors that force cannot. And when we focus on solving problems together rather than competing against each other, we achieve things none of us could accomplish alone. Elena Santos, now running her own technical school on a human frontier world, watched from the presentation booth where she managed the conference's communication systems. She had taken Marcus's teachings and adapted them for human students, proving that the principles worked in reverse. Humans could learn just as much from alien perspectives as aliens could from human ingenuity. Admiral Kesvara, still serving as director of the Interspecies Cooperation Bureau, sat with the council delegation. The programs Marcus had inspired now operated on over 200 worlds, with more requesting inclusion every month. The economic benefits alone had been staggering, as cross-trained technicians solved problems that had puzzled single-species teams for years. But the real success, Marcus knew, was measured in smaller victories, like the Thraxi human engineering team that had developed a new type of sustainable energy system, or the Velnari-Korthak collaboration that had created revolutionary medical devices, or simply the fact that young beings from different worlds could work together without the suspicion and fear that had once dominated galactic relations. We face challenges. Of course, Marcus admitted to the audience. There are still those who believe cooperation is weakness, who think trust is naivety. But they are wrong. The strongest structures in the universe are not built from single materials. They are composites, combinations of different elements that create something greater than the sum of their parts. As he spoke, Marcus's mind drifted to the memorial wall in his workshop. Photos of Captain Santos and the other Falcon unit members looked down on every class he taught, reminding his students that sometimes the greatest courage was choosing to build rather than destroy. The formal presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, but the real work began afterward in the countless smaller meetings and conversations that would shape the future of galactic education. Marcus found himself surrounded by educators, engineers, and government officials, all eager to discuss implementation strategies and share their own success stories. "Teacher Marcus," a familiar voice called out. Marcus turned to see Zira approaching with a young human boy in tow. "I want you to meet David. He's starting the program on Luna Colony next month." The boy looked nervous but determined. "Ms. Zira says you can teach anyone to fix anything," he said. "Is that really true?" Marcus knelt down to the boy's level, just as he had with Zira years earlier. "I can teach you to understand how things work," he said gently. "But the real magic happens when you use that understanding to help others." Later that evening, at a reception for conference participants, Marcus found himself in conversation with Dr. Veltran, the Velnari scientist whose daughter had started it all. The elderly alien's eyes held a warmth that transcended species boundaries. "I must thank you again," Dr. Veltran said, "not just for fixing Zira's toy but for seeing her potential. She tells me she plans to open her own school after graduation. She has a gift for teaching," Marcus replied. "And more importantly, she understands that knowledge belongs to everyone, not just the species that discovered it first." The reception was interrupted by a commotion near the main entrance. A group of protesters had gathered outside, carrying signs demanding an end to alien contamination of human technology. Similar demonstrations had been occurring on Earth and several colonies, led by a political movement that blamed humanity's problems on excessive cooperation with alien species. "Some things never change," Elena said, joining Marcus and Dr. Veltran near the windows. "Change is never easy," Dr. Veltran observed, "but it is inevitable. Fear may delay progress, but it cannot stop it permanently." Marcus watched the protesters for a moment, then turned away. "They're afraid of losing their identity," he said. "They don't understand that cooperation doesn't erase differences, it celebrates them." As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself alone on one of Nexus Prime's observation decks looking out at the stars. Each point of light represented worlds where beings were learning to work together, where the lessons of cooperation were slowly overcoming centuries of isolation and suspicion. Admiral Kesavara joined him at the railing. "Congratulations on the conference. The response has been overwhelmingly positive." "Thank you," Marcus replied. "But this is just the beginning. Real change happens one person at a time, one relationship at a time." Speaking of which, Kesavara said, pulling out a familiar device. We've received a request from the Outer Rim territories. A new species has made contact, and they're interested in learning about our technical cooperation programs. They specifically asked for you to lead the first cultural exchange. Marcus took the communication device and read the message. The species called themselves the Kethmar, and their technology appeared to be based on principles completely unknown to Council science. It would be a chance to start fresh, to build bridges with beings who had no preconceptions about humans or any other species. When do we leave? Marcus asked. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the cargo bay of a Council exploration vessel, surrounded by equipment and supplies for establishing another technical school. With him were Elena, Zira, and a diverse team of instructors from a dozen different species. They were heading into the unknown, but they carried with them something more powerful than any technology, the knowledge that understanding could triumph over fear, that cooperation could overcome competition. As their ship entered hyperspace, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here. It had begun with a broken toy and a little girl's tears. It had led through betrayal and loss, through revelations that shook the galaxy's foundations. But it had also led to something beautiful, proof that beings from different worlds could not only coexist, but could thrive together. The Falcon unit's sacrifice had exposed the darkness of conspiracy and corruption. But their true legacy lived on in every student who learned that differences were strengths, in every problem solved through cooperation, in every friendship that bridged the gap between species. Marcus pulled out his own memento from those early days, a small wrench that Zira had given him, inscribed with words in her native language that translated to builder of bridges. It reminded him that the most important repairs weren't to machines, but to the connections between thinking beings trying to make sense of a vast and often hostile universe. The stars ahead held infinite possibilities. New worlds, new species, new challenges that would require all the wisdom and courage that different civilizations could bring to bear. But Marcus was no longer the broken soldier who had hidden in a repair shop, haunted by loss and betrayal. He was something new, a teacher, a builder, a guardian of the future his squadmates had died to protect. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and somewhere in that immensity, a new generation of children would grow up knowing that the universe was not a place of eternal conflict, but a place where different kinds of intelligence could work together to create miracles. The ship raced toward its destination, carrying hope into the darkness between the stars.